Hello. This is going to be the first of a set of two videos about education on both sides of the Atlantic. I didn't intend to make a series out of this, but it just so happens that I came across both of these incidences more or less simultaneously. The creepy thing about it is that the two instances are more or less interchangeable. That is, if the New York one, about which I'm going to talk right now, had happened in London, I wouldn't have been a bit surprised. And the Yorkshire one, which will be in the next video and is about a small town school, well, if that had happened in Elmhurst Ill, I wouldn't have been surprised about that either. So it's like some sort of a virus has got loose in the English language and is somehow affecting all English speakers. Well, affecting their brains anyway, that's another subject for another discussion. Meanwhile, I want to talk about this lady, picture here, Karen Ames. Karen Ames was commended by Chancellor Richard A. Carranza of the New York City Department of Education for her skill, dedication, and enthusiasm in getting underprivileged children to learn maths, or math, as you put it in America. But she was fired, she says, for sharing a story about her grandparents, victims of the Nazis in Poland, and also she refused to make the Wakanda salute. So, Ms. Ames apparently contravened some iron law by refusing to make a made-up salute invented for the denizens of a fictional country which appeared in a comic book and was turned into a movie. Now, as a matter of fact, if you really want ridiculous, how about this? Talk about life imitating art. I'm afraid I have a lot of trouble taking this school seriously when it's called PS 69. Now, I assume PS means public school and 69 is the number it is. And I'm glad you have so many schools in New York, but some of you might be familiar with the Carry On movies, and you might remember the one which was set in the French Foreign Legion. It was called Follow That Camel. And it was a parody of Beau Geste, starring Phil Silvers as the wheeler-dealer French legionnaire Sergeant Knocker, who was running various scams from the safety of his position as the chief NCO in the outpost, the desert outpost, commanded by Kenneth Williams as Commandant Berger. And the name of the outpost was Fort 69, that is, 69, a name which, as some of you might realise from other Carry On films, was not exactly a coincidence. Now, all right, so we have this situation where this poor woman is working for a school with the unfortunate name of PS 69. Before I continue, I'm going to make a disclaimer. This story was reported in the New York Post. It gives just Ms. Ames's side of the story. Apparently, they did try to get the other side, but the other side were singularly uncommunicative. However, it is therefore only one side of the story I'm reporting to you. I could be wrong, Miss Ames could be a fantasist, and the New York Education Department could be entirely blameless. Then again, the Wakanda salute could be genuine as well, and the Carry On film could have been a documentary. I'll let you make up your own mind. So let's carry on back to school 69. Oh, I do love that. Karen Ames had been working for the Department of Education for 30 years when things started to go pear-shaped. Right here at the bottom of the page, it says that Carranza was running a disrupt and dismantle campaign. Here's another headline from the New York Post. Teachers allegedly told to favour black students in racial equity training. Basically, it seems to me that this guy, Carranza, wants to throw rocks at the education system, and the fact that the kids are learning better maths because of Miss Ames's enthusiasm and skill is not as important as the fact that she won't do that. That's the Wakanda salute, isn't it? Here's the rest of the story. The agenda of Chancellor Carranza and his senior leadership team was euphemistically touted as an equity platform, but in reality it was a platform used to create gender, age, racial and ethnic divisions in the NYC school system, she contends in her Manhattan Supreme Court lawsuit filed Friday. Ames was grilled about her ethnic background, chastised by a colleague at a training session, and admonished when she declined requests to take part in the comic book Wakanda Forever salute to Black Power. Early in his tenure, Carranza visited Ames at PS 69 in District 8, where she had served as superintendent since 2014. Carranza heralded Ames's success in raising math scores at struggling schools, vowing to replicate her methods elsewhere, she says in court papers. But instead of celebrating Ames's work, Cheryl Watson Harris, Carranza's top deputy, who left last year to become schools chief in DeKalb County, GA, I suppose that's Georgia, isn't it? Interrogated Ames during a chauffeured car ride about her DOE history, her family residency, and improperly inquired about her ethnicity. So it means that, let's see, Watson Harris was in a chauffeured car, had trapped Ames there in the back seat or whatever, and was grilling her at New York City expense because somebody was paying for that car, and in a situation where you could fairly say that Ames could feel bullied. An implicit bias workshop where superintendents were asked to tell their personal stories. Ames talked about her grandparents' loss of 2 children during the Holocaust, only to have colleague, well, not much of a colleague, Rashida Amon, I assume that's Amon. Here's a photo. That is taken from a Twitter icon, so I don't know whether it is Miss Amon or somebody she admires that she's using as an icon, but I'm assuming it's her. To have colleague Rashida Amon tell her, "You better check yourself," the lawsuit alleges. "That is not about being Jewish. It's about black and brown boys of colour only," court papers quote Amon as scolding. So it's not enough they're black and brown boys, they're of colour as well. She's sort of doubling up on this victimhood thing. And in August of 2018, Ames was summoned to DOE headquarters, where Watson Harris handed her a termination letter telling her the department was moving in a new direction. Yeah, we've all heard that one. Colleagues were prohibited from communicating with her, and Watson Harris ordered staff to eradicate any reference to Ames down to the district's purple colour scheme she had designed, she charges. Now, there's this next bit is most important and especially relevant for people in Britain who might not understand what was going on here. When the single mom pleaded to keep her employment, retirement benefits and health insurance, the DOE sent her to a Brooklyn rubber room with nothing to do. Now, first of all, I want to explain. In America, many times your health insurance is linked to your employment. When you lose your employment, you lose your health insurance, and that would also apply to your children. So this woman was going to be depersoned, not only professionally, but she was going to lose her health insurance and her children's health insurance as well. This is a powerful whip they were wielding over her. And she pleaded with them. I suppose they realised she had to. be employed because they couldn't actually find any serious offence with which they could charge her with to be sacked. And they'd find themselves on with a lawsuit for unfair dismissal. But what they did was what in Britain is called constructive dismissal. That is, they tried to get her to leave of her own accord by making life so unpleasant that she'd leave. And they did that by putting her in a rubber room. I'd never heard of a rubber room before, but this is what a rubber room is. This is a Wikipedia entry. The Rubber Room is a 2010 documentary film about the reassignment centres run by New York City Department of Education, which the filmmakers claim exist in various forms in school districts across the United States, allegedly intended to serve as temporary holding facilities for teachers accused of various kinds of misconduct who are awaiting an official hearing. And yeah, it's called a rubber room, as a sort of a reference to the holding cells in a psychiatric hospital. Right, so she was stuck with that, but she stuck with it, well, probably because of her children. I would have done that, so I'm reading that into her. That she wanted the health insurance for herself, but for her children as well. And so she stuck with all of this. And a month later, Ames was given a choice: take a demotion or be removed from the payroll in 24 hours. Now, there is no such thing as dismissing somebody on 24 hours notice unless they have, sort of been caught in the act of some violence to the children, something along those lines. And even then, I think there's supposed to be a cooling off period. But 24 hours, this is definitely unfair, horrible, cruel, and even criminal behaviour, really. And this is all in the name of equity, remember. Demotion from the payroll in 24 hours. She took the demotion. And she took it, again, because it meant she still had her medical insurance, I suppose, and the pension and that sort of thing. The DOE eventually assigned Ames to the Office of School Health, but gave her no work for 5 months. Again, the constructive dismissal route. In July, Ames finally took a job as a school administrator in another state. So I always try to double check these things. And I found an article in another source in which a woman called Rafaela Espinal, a Dominican American, is also suing, and for a similar reason. It says that Miss Espinal identifies as an Afro-Latina, let's get this into the right categories here, which makes her a woman of colour. Or as Rashida Ayman might have put it, a brown woman of colour. But she also thought that the Wakanda salute was a load of tripe and about as accurate as the carryings on in a Carry On movie. And she refused to do that as well. And so she got sidelined or sacked or something too. So it's a poison that's running its way, not only through somebody like Ames, who says she was got at because she was white or Jewish or both, but also it's going for, well, just people of colour, the people this equity plan is supposed to be boosting in some way. But it isn't that. It's just a group of people who see a way of getting power. And they can use racial divisions to do it. So that's what they're doing. Miss Espinal's words, spoken through her lawyers, were that officials had introduced a racial divide where there should be none. Good for Miss Espinal. I hope she wins her case. And remember, all you guys in New York, all of this is coming out of your taxes. You should be quite glad about that. Oh, well, that's a joke almost worthy of a Carry On film, isn't it? Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.